Today I would like you to pay attention on writing personal notes. We know that we get personal notes for the 8th question at your O-level exams, and it carries 5 marks. So you have learned you have some knowledge on writing personal notes, but I would like to put everything into a nutshell and give it to you now.
Right. So now let's take a look at what personal notes really are. A personal note is a brief message written to a known person. So we usually write personal notes to people whom we know, and they have to be brief and written to the point. So when we write personal notes, we have to give the information to the point, and they have to be brief. We need not give unnecessary information when we write personal notes. And when you answer a question at the O-level exams, it's kind of a guided writing. You have to follow the guidelines when you answer the question on personal notes. Because you have to answer to what the question requires you to write in your note. So it is a kind of guided writing. And then you cannot write what you like. When you write a note at the exam, you cannot write whatever you like. You have to write only according to the information given in the question. And then you are allowed to use contracted forms when you write personal notes, such as I'm, isn't, he's. Instead of writing I am or is not or he is, you are allowed to use contracted forms when you write personal notes. Unlike in formal letters, I tell you that you should not write contracted forms. So in personal notes, you are allowed to use contracted forms. Now let's take a look at the structure of a personal note. First, you have the salutation, and after the salutation, you have to give a comma. So when you write the salutation, you don't need to write dear when you write a note. When you write a letter, you don't need to write dear when you write a note. But if you write a note to someone superior to you, like a teacher, a coach, or even your principal, then you can use dear, because it would not look nice or it may not sound nice when you don't use dear. So just to make it sound better, you can use dear then, but otherwise just giving the receiver's name is enough when you write a personal note. Next, we have the message, and the message, like I told you before, it should be brief and to the point. And then finally, you have to write your name or the sender's name at the end. But you don't need to write yours faithfully or your loving or best regards or whatever, like you do in a letter. You don't need to write all that. You have to only just give the sender's name at the end. Now, students, I have sent you some model answers on personal notes. So let's take a look at some of those questions and answers. Look at the first one. You are unable to attend sports practices next week. Write a note of excuse to your coach giving reason. So you have to look at the question carefully, and note down what you have to write in the note. Here you have to inform that you are unable to attend the sports practices and write a note of excuse to your coach giving a reason. So you have to give a reason for not attending. Now let's look at the note or the answer note. Dear coach, I am very sorry to inform you that I am not able to come for sports practices next week as I have to attend my sister's wedding. Please excuse me for my absence. Tarindu. Now when we look at the first part, you have to say, I am very sorry to inform you. So you have to mention that you are sorry to inform that you are unable to come for sports practices. So that sentence gives all that. And then as I have to attend my sister's wedding. So the reason should be a valid reason. Since you are having sports practices next week, you can't say that you can't say something which cannot be predicted. Like you can't predict things and say that I cannot attend sports practices since I will be ill or something like that. You have to give a valid reason. So because of that, the reason given here is a valid reason. It says I have to attend my sister's wedding. And then, please excuse me for my absence. So this sentence can be written again and again when you write notes of excuse to someone. So you can say, please excuse for my absence, and then it is ended as Tarindu. You can see that there is nothing such as yours faithfully or your loving or yours sincerely. Like in letter writing, you have to just end with the sender's name. So when you look here, you can see that this note answers all the information required in the question. Now let's look at question number 4. A friend has invited you to lunch next Sunday, but you are unable to go because you have some relations visiting. Write a note of apology explaining the situation. So here too you have to write a note of apology, and you have to look at the question carefully and understand what information you have to give in your answer. So first of all, you have to take note that a friend has invited you to lunch next Sunday. So when you get an invitation, the first thing you have to do is to thank him for his invitation. So when you receive an invitation, you have to thank that person for inviting you. So now let's look at the answer. Saman, thank you very much for your kind invitation to have lunch with you next Sunday. So like I told you, first of all, we have thanked him for inviting you for lunch next Sunday. I am very sorry to tell you that unfortunately I am unable to join you because my aunt who is in Kandy is visiting us after a long time. So I have to be at home next Sunday. So I am very sorry to tell you. The part I am very sorry to tell you says or shows how sorry, or since it's a note of apology, you have to use phrases like that. You can say I am very sorry to tell you, or I regret to inform you, or phrases like that can be used in a note of apology. That unfortunately I am unable to join you because my aunt who is in Kandy is visiting us. So now when we look at the question, they have already given us the reason as to why you cannot join him for lunch. So the reason is some relations visiting. So you can say that your aunt is visiting you from Kandy. So it is after a long time. So it is a valid reason, and it shows that it is a relation who will be visiting you. So I have to be at home next Sunday. Kamal. So once again, this note gives the relevant information required in the question. It is brief, but it has all the necessary information required in the question. Now let's look at question number 7. Your friends who are in the hostel have organized a class trip. Write a note to your father for permission to go on the trip. Say where, when, and how you are going. Who is taking you? How much money you have to pay. So once again, you have to look at the question carefully, and then when you write the answer, you have to give all the necessary information. Like I told you, it is a guided writing, so it is guided by the question, right? Now look at the answer. Father, my friends who are in the hostel have organized a class trip. They have arranged to go to Kandy by train on the 10th of June. Now look at the first sentence. My friends who are in the hostel have organized a class trip. So there you have informed your father by saying by giving information about having to go on a class trip. So they have arranged to go to Kandy by train on the 10th of June. So this sentence answers where, when, and how you are going. Where to Kandy, when, on the 10th, and how by train. Our class teacher, Mr. Fernando, will accompany us. Who is taking you? Mr. Fernando. So there too you have answered another point, or you have given information on another point. We have to pay rupees 1,500 for the journey. So how much money you have to pay is given there. And then finally you can say, please send your letter of permission along with the money before the 31st of May. So finally, when you ask your father for a letter of permission, it indirectly asks him for permission. So you can give a sentence like this when you have to write a note asking for permission, right? So and then it is ended with the sender's name, Sahan. My dear students, you can see when you look at this note too that it is brief and it gives all the information required in the question.
So my dear students, you can see that it's easy to score marks with note writing, and however you have to concentrate on certain points. You have to have accurate spellings, and then your sentences have to be grammatically correct, and they have to be well connected, and you should also use punctuations and capital letters in their correct places. Then of course it would be easy for you to score marks at your exam. I have already sent you some model answers on note writing, and I have also sent you around 20 questions, which includes six past O-level questions. So I expect you to complete all that when you come back to school, so that we can continue this discussion then. So thank you, and may God bless you.